Here we go. Here we go again. Number 19 of the Darkness to Light podcast. Thank you all again, those of you who continue to join in. Very much appreciated. And the world remains in chaos since the last one. It's just funny. It's not funny. It's tragic watching it escalate. As you've been watching it as long as I have been, in terms of seeing the problems in the world and seeing the challenges that we face in the world. One of I suppose I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. The old kind of saying that ignorance is bliss. That comes up a lot with this work. And I remember back to the times before I really could see the world the way that I now see it. And I was very optimistic and things seemed to be, in a certain way. And now, especially over probably the last 10, 12 years, right up until the kind of present day, when you see the challenges we're facing and the things that are going on in the world, it's such a tricky and difficult time to be alive and to be trying to navigate your way through this life experience. A lot of people are in survival. There's so many are in survival just now, and to remember or to even think that it's meant to be something way greater than that. We're supposed to come here, I do believe, and have a completely different life experience from the one that so many are going through just now. And that's something that with this work and many other people who have similar levels of intention, I suppose, to try and make it better, possibly awareness as well, then the plan is to make it better for as many people as we can. That's what this work is all about. And this is going out, this is about, I'm afraid again, it's been a wee bit of a push the last kind of 4 or 5 weeks, certainly since the tour, to kind of squeeze them in. And they've kind of felt a wee bit rushed over the last kind of 4 or 5 weeks, just kind of, I really kind of certain amount of time I could do the podcast, get it in, and whether I was feeling it or not, I had to just basically jump in and get it out there. Because of the promise I made to myself, that I was going to do it every single Friday, no matter what. And that's been interesting, just watching that, on to number 19 now. They are getting easier. I'm definitely finding a wee bit of a flow with them. I'm really enjoying them, which is important. If I wasn't enjoying them, I probably wouldn't be doing them. The intention with them is to share what I'm doing, share this way of living that I have discovered over the last while. Why? Because it helps people. The things that I've picked up on my own healing journey, which started in 1997. I was counting up, I always get mixed up whether it was 26, 27, I'm going into my 28th year. 1986 when the wheels came off, when I went off the tracks, and then 1997 is when I found my way back onto it. And it's fascinating to think, how far on, where I started and who I was at that time and before that time, and then over the last 26, 27 years, based on what I've done and the work that I've done and the studying that I've done and the internal self-examination and contemplation and absolutely the kind of the meditation side of things. It's fascinating for me to look at it and watch who I became and who I am just now. Because I can still remember the guy before, the guy, I can remember it all way back. But certainly as I became an adult, an early adult, and before that happened, which was 24, 25. So really, was I really an adult, a young man? But my belief system then and who I was, very, very different obviously. And then watching the evolution of Jim, what I became and the expansion of me. And I was thinking about this morning, this one was planned. And they are in sequence, they're finding a flow. And they're carrying on from the previous one. The previous one was all about the answer. The solutions, and before that we're talking about the problems of the world, so the challenge that we face, and now a couple of weeks later you think of even more challenges, the scale of the challenges that we're looking at just now, just across the border down in England. We know that it's normally in America, it's normally down in different parts of the Middle East, it's normally in kind of the far corners of the world, but it's just across the border and you're talking about a few hours drive down the road, and all of a sudden you start to kind of obviously you take notice and you can't get away from it. Just now it's getting pushed really, really hard. I never ever really spend any time in the news unless it's to kind of dip in and see what's going on. But very difficult just now to find anything. You know, the minute you get into, I sit with a cup of tea, and I'm having, you know, I've got 10 minutes to myself having a bite, then I will stick on YouTube and I'll watch a couple of things that are interesting myself. But just now it's very difficult. You're going to be forced to look at, you know, the problems that we face, and that's obviously very, very concerning. When it gets to the level that it's at just now, you know, you're looking at, you know, different, obviously we're so separated, which is hard enough. But when you start to add in things like, you know, religion, and that kind of stuff, then it becomes fairly terrifying. And I remember Wayne Dyer a long time ago talking about how almost every single war that had ever been was almost always to do with, you know, the desire to prove like how much, you know, how your relationship to the divine, you know, and what God thought of you and how you were doing it correct, and how because they were doing it a different way, you know, you had to try and stop them doing it that way, and how, you know, you were being right because that's the way, and it's just fascinating. You know, the way that the religion kind of separates, and the wars and the lives and the just countless, you know, decimation that's been caused over the years. I think of the Catholic Church, you know, my church. We used to be my church growing up until you start to see. Yeah, I remember being in Rome a long time ago, just before we were married, and being in, you know, obviously the Vatican and the city, and just seeing the levels, you know, of just opulence and just absolute. Just, it was so gross, you know, and very quickly you could, obviously it's a business, of course it is, when you start to see what they own and what they control on some level, and then some would say even above that. But even the whole place, you know, in terms of the shops, in terms of selling almost like selling the relics, you know, all the different rosary beads and crazy prices. You know, I think my mum wanted a wee set of rosary beads at the time, and you know, you're thinking, Jesus, this is some what a sales operation it really is, you know. So when it gets to that level, when they're starting to look at, you know, being separated enough, like it's like we're going to now stand under our gods and fight against each other, that's insanity. That's terrifying and insane, and it's so far removed, you know, from what I do believe God would want. And it's making me think a lot, you know, about, you know, what am I doing? You know, what else can I do? How else can I help? What can I bring to this? Because the protesting doesn't work. No matter how right you are, no matter how bad it is, no matter how, you know, black and white, you know, the whole thing is, it's like complete, and it's so obvious and to understand for some people, it seems, the way they portray it. But it's way more complicated than that. You know, the levels and the challenges that we face on so many different, you know, from different places, different areas, every single, you know, everywhere you look just now, and it's been like this for a long time. You know, the stress we've been under, it was way before COVID, you know, but certainly obviously since COVID, and the new challenges we face, you know, not just with our health, but, you know, all the kind of the cost of living, and, you know, all the financial stuff that's going on, and just inflation. It's crazy times we're in. You know, I realise it's very, very difficult, and a lot of people are suffering, a lot of people are struggling. And, you know, for me, how we get through that and how we manage our way through it, there's obviously two ways to do it. You know, and this is where I think this work and what I'm teaching, what I'm sharing, what I've picked up along the way, I've always known that for it to go out in a bigger, you know, to more people, I suppose, then the reason that people are going about it is normally because of, you know, pain and suffering, and a lot of times it's decimation. That's how I found this work. You know, if you'd have said to me when I was 22, 23, you're going to go on a devotional journey for the next 20 years after almost losing your life, you know, with a singular desire to experience God and to know what God is, and you're going to get up every single day between 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning and sit in meditation for 2-3 hours, sometimes almost every single day. You're going to change your diet, you're going to take away almost everybody you know, you're going to, you know, have this devotional internal journey that nobody knows about. And then eventually you're going to get to a point where you experience something that you didn't even know existed, you know, this direct experience of the divinity that's inside you. If you'd have said that to me at 22, 23, 24, I'd have thought you were on drugs, you know, as simple as that, because there was no way who I was in my belief system and the level of consciousness I was coming in at, which is everything. You know, I grew up, you know, that guy, just, you know, sports, want to play football, make money, be successful, have the things, have the toys. And the timing today, I was walking out for a walk today, and I actually met one of my boyhood heroes, who I'm not going to name, but it was really interesting it's always interesting to meet somebody famous. It's quite funny for me, even the kind of the level that the vortex is at, when people sometimes recognise you, and especially obviously when they come to the events, and people change towards you, which is fascinating. And I can feel myself doing that when I see somebody who I recognise or I know, and this man certainly was famous. And anybody who's heard me talk on here, that's the thing that I do believe I was meant to do. I was meant to play football. It's the only thing I was ever exceptional at. I was brilliant at it. In terms of scoring goals anyway, I had this awareness to score goals. And I've always thought, what happened to me and how that didn't happen. Like, if it did happen, who would I become? Who was I then? What was I chasing? Which was absolutely fame, fortune, the ego. To be the star. That's the whole thing. That's what every young boy's dream, isn't it? And then obviously everything that comes with that. The finances. The females. Absolutely. The lifestyle, the cars, the boats, the jets, whatever it is. You see them now. That's always what I believed, how it was going to go for me. When I was 15 years old, I had a financial advisor. Obviously because mum and dad's business back and all that kind of stuff. But it was linked, and I remember them saying at the time, by the time you get to 28, you make your last move to Barcelona. And this will be worth, you'll have all this set aside and you'll be set up for the rest of your days. And at 15 years old, that's how serious, not just myself, but we were with this. Because the only thing I was going to do. And then obviously, as my good friend and brother Ricky says, we make plans and the gods laugh. And I think to how that dream, just got obliterated. And then what I became when I gave up that dream inside 3 or 4 years to the point of almost losing my life. And then after that, the journey, and the whole personal development into spiritual development, into the direct experience and the realisation of the divinity that was inside me. And then, the years after that, to kind of try and share it and pass it on and give people the gifts that I learned along the way. It's been fascinating, and today when I met that man, it was just, and I can feel where people are. You can feel who they are at a certain level. You can feel, you can feel, and I've obviously seen him on the television loads of times, and so you get a kind of idea of who he is. And I had a wee bit of a joke with him, how when he left my boyhood club, how he broke my heart. A wee bit of giggle with that. And but just feeling where he was, and then watching him at his stage, a wee bit older than me. In fact, probably a good bit older than me. But watching him, where he's at in his life, and I'm aware of his personal circumstances in terms of the stuff that he's been through because he's a public figure. And it was a real kind of, when I walked away from it, it was a 30-second, thanks very much, really kind of appreciate, the memories that I had as a wee guy were brilliant, just one of my absolute heroes. It was great to meet him, it really was, it was fantastic. But I got a glimpse of, I walked away from it, what if I had made it, what if I had became that footballer and became that guy, and went on this journey, of playing career and then probably into managerial career. That's the stuff I would absolutely have done. I was a captain of the team, I was serious, I was interested in all that side of the training, and I was very disciplined. Again, another devotion from really young. I remember 11, 12 years old, just getting away on holiday or football tournaments, being abroad, just early to bed, and the rest of the boys, even at 11, 12, 13, would be wrecked. And I'd be early to bed again the next day, and went even on holiday with my pals when I was older, 16, 17, they'd be out, dancing the night away and getting wrecked, and I'd be up early going for a run and going to mass, just all that kind of stuff. So the disciplines that I had, that there's absolutely, I do believe that would end up a full career for me, probably into management, and that would have just been everything I'd done. And when I walked away from him, I could feel where he is, and I could see where he is at the stage in his life, and you see it a lot, especially ex-professional footballers, and I suppose athletes as well. But they get to a point where kind of nothing really makes sense. And not that I'm saying that's the way it is for him, but from looking from the outside, it's what you actually do in your life, and we understand this work, this way of the world in terms of expanding and contributing and fulfilling your potential, and the realisation of what you're meant to be doing here. Long after his career's probably finished 30 years ago, and now you see him probably in his 60s, and I was walking along just thinking, God, that could easily have been me, where I would have missed this entire side of my existence in terms of the work that I did, namely the spiritual stuff, and then the stuff that I learned off the back of it. With the breath work and the cold exposure, and the things that I'm now doing with the retreats and taking people away, and the miracles that we're seeing, literal miracles that people are experiencing when we get round about this work. And it just gave me a snapshot, of holy shit, that would have been great at the time. I would probably have been dead. I've made that joke before, if I had made that stage and that age, who I was with that amount of excess, there's a good chance I wouldn't have made it, possibly. Although, thinking back to the good guy that was, maybe I strayed to the dark side when I stopped playing football, so we'll never know. But, looking back now, the choice, of like, right, what would I take? Would I go that way and get all of that early on, or would I rather be here just now, going through this life with the tools and the techniques and the excitement I've got in terms of what's coming up for the next 10, 20, 30 years, God willing, with the path that I'm on. And straight away it was like, I'm so blessed that what happened to me did, what I brought upon myself, what that enabled me to become. And then really kind of switching from, because all that stuff, the circus as I now see it, the entertainment, sports, football, even watching the Olympics just now, it's important, but how important is it when you hear some of the horror stories going on in the world with people losing loved ones, and so it's a kind of it's an organisation, the whole Olympics thing, and the money they make, and how again topside heavy it is in terms of the finances and how the athletes get treated, and they're kind of 15 minutes of fame when they win their medal, but at some point, when that's all said and done, it's like, what's next? And the low levels, that level of consciousness, that level of like circus level of consciousness, being entertained, chasing the stuff, being successful, even watching the commentators, and their take on things and their perspective on things and what they think, and it's all entertainment, isn't it? The whole thing's entertainment, and that's where most people are. That's where the majority of people going through the world. That's certainly where I was. That's where I started, and then through the series of events that I went through, and then with the desire to, number one, discover who I was. There was nothing left of me. I was broken to bits, and between mental, nervous, emotional, absolute spiritual breakdown, there was nothing left. So I was absolutely at rock bottom. So at that point, you start to ask different questions, especially, as sick as I was, with my life on the line, in terms of suicidal, absolutely suicidal, like that place where, hopelessness, where nothing makes sense. See, when you start to come out of that and you start to get a second chance, as I did, then you start to ask different questions. And the spiritual journey and the spiritual path, and these practices that I am teaching, everything leads towards, the spiritual life. And this episode is all about the spiritual life. I came up with a hashtag a couple of weeks ago, and it came on the back of, I would be going to do like maybe a corporate event, or I would be doing a big speaking event, and my wife would she would check in and she would say like, how far are you going to take it? That was her question. But like, what are you going to talk about, was what she asked. And a lot of the times, and it just came through, and I would say, I'm full God. I'm going to go full God. No matter where I start, and no matter what my intentions are, and even if I want to rein it in and hold it back, eventually I'm going to start talking about God. Eventually I'm going to start talking about spirituality. Eventually I'm going to talk about my experiences, and what I got, from especially the first 17, 18 years of that journey. Very different now, but what I got when I was in that kind of sweet spot, when I was really like batting lumps out every single day, and I was on this real mission to get to this place that I knew existed, but just with kind of blind faith and constant devotion, constant never-ending. I'm thinking constant remembrance is a word that I picked up with Saj Marg, and it was kind of like that. You're constantly on this mission, on this path, and then when you get it, as I did, then over the backside of that, and then how the last wee bit has been, it's a very, very interesting journey. So the spiritual life is what this is about. That's what this one is about, and it's my take on it, because a lot of people think, and I'm watching a lot just now, I've got a whole load of people on about the Vortex just now, and the programme, and very many of them are coming in, and they're putting the work in, they're doing the work, which for me is every single day. You see them in the meditations every morning. You can feel where they are with the stuff that's getting posted on the group, and the path that they're on and where they're trying to get to, especially when I'm talking about my stories, or they're reading spiritual texts, or listening to spiritual teachers, the people like Wayne Dyer, or listening to Ram Dass, or they're reading the yogic texts, or because it's everywhere. When you start to see this information, then it's everywhere. People talking about the stuff that I'm sharing. I'm just talking about it in a different way, from a layman's perspective, a Scottish, working class layman's perspective. That's all I'm doing, with the intention to try and help build bridges for those who are seeking, this way of living. And the journey, once you get it, is the bit that's interesting for me just now, because I certainly got it a long time ago. It took me a long time, it really did, and the focus that I had and the time that I put into it, where everything changed, absolutely every single thing changed within my life. I took away the television, took away going to the doctors for medication, Never even looked at a newspaper, haven't bought a newspaper, haven't done any of that stuff since 1996 was the last time I sat in front of a doctor. In terms of looking for medications or pills, or I've been to a couple of obviously knee operations and different things, or a couple of health concerns way back. But in terms of going to your GP and looking for pills or whatever it is, that's something that I gave up a long time ago. And the journey for me, nobody had to tell me to do it. Nobody had to say, like, come on, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, you need to get up out of your bed. I never had to set an alarm really, ever. Unless I was getting up for a flight, and then I wouldn't be sleeping anyway. But the normal day-to-day stuff, I would be woken up every single night. Once the spiritual part of this journey started for me, every single night between 3 and probably 3:30 in the morning time, I'd be like yanked out of bed. And now watching some of my students like, understanding that, but it's the same time every single morning. They even complain that the 5:30 start for the meditation is too late because they're up for hours before that. And that's, again, I learned that through Wayne Dyer, that's spirit calling you to bed. That's the time to get up and sit in spirit. That morning breeze, as Patanjali used to, was it Patanjali Yogi? The morning breeze has secrets to tell you, do not go back to sleep. It's rumour, isn't it? So sitting in that silence, sitting in that morning breeze, sitting in the quiet before the worlds began and before all the wee Neds run about in their courses are keeping you awake at night, all that kind of stuff, when it's just quiet, when it's peaceful. That was me for 17, 18 years, every single day, 7 days a week, and a lot of times at night time as well. What I got through that process and what I became through that process is sometimes difficult when you look back and you think how vast it was and how many kind of different directions that I went and how many teachers I would seek out, and some were for me and some weren't, which was great, learning how that whole process. I was blessed to be able to train like in person with a lot of some of the greats. Met Wayne Dyer, photographed with him twice, trained with Abraham Hicks. Anthony Robbins was a person with him right at the start, but he was talking about spiritual stuff. And then obviously through the books and the cassettes and these people, spiritual teachers, one of the books there, Dr. Hawkins, Transcending Levels of Consciousness and Modern Man and Spirituality is how this podcast began, thinking about that book, and just the spiritual journey and a modern man being in this life and what it means and obviously what you can do about it with the challenges we're facing just now. That's where it's all going. So for me, the time that it took, the way that I did it, where nobody really knew about it outside my wife, so I had the space, where I could take months, sometimes years, to work my way through different concepts and to try and make sense of it, and then to learn about it, and then start to bring it in and apply these different practices, different awarenesses, different intentions into my life. And through that long, slow process, then eventually I got to a point, after hundreds of thousands of hours, so many days, just always on it, just this constant strive to get to this place I knew existed because I'd heard them talking about it. I'd heard Wayne Dyer talking about it, and I'd heard Deepak Chopra was talking about it at the time, and I knew it was there. I could feel that it was calling me, and it was that call, that pulling me forward all the time. And then eventually when I got it, when I really got it, when I had that enlightened experience, it happened a few times, but the first time that it happened, then everything changed. I made sense of everything, to be in the presence of that, to be in that field of consciousness, to be in that space which you could only ever describe as divine. It's a bit you never ever want to leave, ever. And then to feel it and to be in the presence of it, which took a long time, it really did. It took many, many years. Even I really started to get to the really close to it, even how that unfolded. And then eventually, to get what I was looking for by, probably ironically enough, stop trying to get what I was looking for, just to stop and to be and just to allow and to surrender to it. They talk about surrender all the time, which just means really hand over to God. The divine mind, consciousness, the feel, again, not word God, I feel as if I'm always correcting it and just saying, I don't know what God you're talking about, I'm not having any offence towards your God, but the God for me is source energy. It's a field of consciousness, that's what I experienced, that's what, after sitting for all the years in it, and with the absolute desire to become it, eventually, it became me and I became it. I got that for a period of time. First time was a couple of hours, and when I came back, again, I've documented it very well, I believe. I've spoken about it so many times, and apologies if I'm repeating myself, but when I came back from it, how can you give this to people? How can you share this with people? Because what I knew, whatever it is that had just happened to me, whatever it is that I'd just been through, every single thing felt better. I felt whole, I felt complete. I felt the way that I was meant to feel, I do believe, or certainly it was familiar in the fact that I felt like I'd been this place before. And straight away, when I came back, I knew that I couldn't make sense of it. And this is the frustrating thing with this work, is to try and give it to people when you're talking about it or trying to create even like sales literature. We're just finished the corporate brochure and I try to keep it very general and very open and like no too salesy and present the offer. That's the way that I was trying to do it. Like never ever trying to like force it into people, but help them if they're looking for it. And the words and even with my enthusiasm, even with me coming at it, and a lot of people, I can see them. It looks like truth. They can feel the truth that I'm speaking because it is my truth. This is what I went through. But again, it's like at some point you need to experience it. And straight away for me, it was like the words are very difficult to make sense of this, and it was straight to the feelings. And then after everything else that I picked up along the way, with vibrations and energies and the different levels of calibrated consciousness, all that kind of stuff. Then when you feel the presence of that divine, and then you understand that the way you need to experience it for yourself, being you, would be in your feelings and your emotions, and then when you start to understand, how the heart works and the intelligence of the heart, then this needs to go. We need to get out of this. The head isn't going to work. The mind, the intellect, the words don't work. They only go so far. At a certain level of consciousness, they're going to stop, and then it's just above that, where the spiritual stuff. That's what it starts to be. That's what you start to experience it and feel it, and that's done in your feelings and your emotions, and that's done, in these upper centers, your heart, up into the throat. You'll feel it up in certain levels of the mind. They talk about the third eye, obviously, visionary consciousness coming in the pineal gland. And you can experience it anyway, but it's normally in these upper centres. That's what it comes in, and that was certainly my experience. It pulled a lot of the stuff that I was carrying from the lower centres up into my heart, and I started to absolutely live in a more kind of heart open, heart giving orientated way. That was where when I came back, because the love that I felt and the love that I felt in my heart, and not just the love that I felt, but the love that I became, to sit in the presence of that and to feel it and experience it, but then to become it. And to know that you're part of it, and that you're protected and you're whole and you're complete. That's something that everybody obviously should experience, and that's the mission, is to give it to as many people as I can, and to help them find the stepping stones without giving anybody the gift of robbing them of their own life's journey, and doing it for them. That's never ever been my intention. Even some of my students, it's like, I don't give advice. I never say this is what you need to do ever. It's I can say what I would do. I always refer them back to doing the work. Are you doing the work? Yes or no? Are you doing the basics? Are you doing the breath work? Are you doing the meditation? Are you doing the cold exposure? Are you tending to your awareness and being intentional with your life? The kind of fundamentals, the basics of the program. But at some point, it's the journey itself, and certainly the way that it went for me. When I got it, and when I really got it, and I came back from it, and I wanted to get straight back to it, and this world all of a sudden became very, very dull. It really did, and I'm still hugely challenged with that. The numbing effects of the circus and the zoo, and the daily awarenesses. That's one of my biggest challenges. Always has been since I had that experience. So when you get it, you really get it, and you know who you are, and you see through the veil. And you start to see through the programming and the patterns. You start to see through the ignorance, ignorance meaning that we just don't know. I use that word ignorance a lot. I can feel people get offended by it. Who's he calling ignorant? What you doing calling me ignorant, kind of thing. But ignorance just means we don't know. And I was absolutely ignorant. I was completely ignorant to this entire way, this other kind of second half of my life of being in the light, and understanding what the light is, and in terms of consciousness and God and the divine mind and my relationship with it and the part that I play within it, and that whole bit of it, the whole part of who I became, and what the journey allowed me to get after all the years. When you come back, I think the challenge is, a lot of people think they talk about enlightenment and as if that's it, you've got it, and then you've got to be sitting in this divine bliss for the rest of your days, and that has not been my experience at all. It really hasn't. I wish it was. I wish I could just go to that place and shut my eyes and just be in bliss and be back to that space. Absolutely. I've had glimpses of it. I've been close a few times. It's actually happened a few times since it happened, probably 10 years ago, maybe 11 years ago. And the way to get back to it, I think about it often, because at the time, if you trace my steps of what I actually did, to get to that experience, then there was so many things, and obviously I was on the up curve, and I was excited, and I was eager, and I was driven. The time that I was in, the time that I was in my life, as well as the time that I was in within the world, probably enabled that easier to happen. It'd be obviously probably more challenging now, even with the conflicting amount of advice that's out there, and people saying that this is the correct way to do it. I didn't have that, I didn't have an internet, so it was basically me with a book or a tape cassette and basically sitting in silence. The great quote that God's one and only voice is silence, that was my companion for all the years. I just sat in silence. There was no guided stuff, there was no music until much later on. So I sat in silence and I got my lessons, I got my experience in silence. But when I came back from it, this life and the challenges of it, as a spiritual being in it, ignorance is absolutely bliss. You see people just now, just doing what they're doing, just getting through their life and just being that guy or that girl. And it looks to a lot from the outside, even if you are, awake and aware, as I believe I am, they're having a great time, so you then start to question things like sometimes like who's right and who's wrong. Because this way isn't easy. It really isn't. It's really challenging a lot of the time, the spiritual journey. It's dead simple, but it is not easy. But for whatever reason, and I think to where I am just now, and I think to the work that I'm doing, and I think to the way that I'm sharing this work, and how we're getting it to people, and how that's getting refined all the time, I do believe it is the answer. I do believe it's the only answer, if I'm being completely honest. Because when you look to the world and the circus and the zoo and the jungle, and you see the politics and the fighting and the way that it's escalating in terms of the separation which takes us just further and further away, then I'm sure if you go to these, and I don't know a lot about the religions, I'll be honest with you, but I'm sure if you go to the kind of back to the source of when these religions came about, then there must be a time where the acknowledgement of the divinity of God, and within each and every one of us. Jesus is the one that I go to because I remember him from childhood, and certainly some of the Bible quotes that you get now, and I'm not a Christian, I am not. Jesus wasn't a Christian, incidentally, and he wasn't a Catholic either. Was he, how far do you take that? What was Jesus? Jesus was a man of God. And basically the people that came after him, they're the ones that saw the business and the sales and the marketing opportunities to grab the stuff that he did in his short lifespan and turn it into something that's still going. I mean, what a business. What a job they've done, and then when you get to the stuff that they do in the name of that, in terms of the acquisitions that they've made, make it that whatever you think, whatever makes sense to you, the acquisitions they've taken, in terms of countries and real estate and crowns and people and just nations in the name of God. It's fascinating when you go back to the source, and Jesus was talk about him and his disciples being followers of the way, which is the exact same way that I do believe that I'm trying to follow the divine path, which in this time we're in just now, it's the way, it's the only way that works. We are so far away from it, the ability to get back to it is going to be very difficult. The further and further we get away, every time there's a protest, every time there's a fight, every time somebody gets murdered or killed, and there's obviously got to be the response. You just need to look at the different regions of the world that have been in war and conflict forever. It's almost like to the point where it's never ever going to stop, you would think. And then I saw something on television yesterday where I saw over in Ireland Catholics and Protestants walking down the street together. See, it was like a miracle. It was like an absolute miracle. Just watching these two sides. And I grew up, we used to go to Ireland on holiday back in the 80s, and I can remember driving through Dungannon. I was driving with my dad, 1981. It was at a time where all there was the hunger strikers and all that kind of stuff was going off. And I remember the place was blown up the night before it, and somebody lost their life. And you think now, well, certainly it's 45, whatever years later, 40 years later, but like Catholics and Protestants on the same side. And I think humanity just now, I think so many people are waking up, but at the same time, so many people are confused and lost because they don't really know which way to go. A lot of people, I remember when I really woke up and I saw the horrors of the world, it was so challenging because I remember the first realisation, it was like every single thing that I know is wrong. I remember that penny drop and I was like, like, where do you begin? And I can see people waking up, and you can see the anger and the resentment that's in people just now, just this need to express it and do something about it. And then you've got, the maniacs on that are really like shining a light on how bad it is and what's wrong and how they fix it, and really, there's one or two in particular that does not make it better, it makes it worse. And that's in fact, I do believe what they want, the powers that be, They want you to be fighting, they want you to be in conflict, they want you to be chucking rocks at them, and because the next stop for that is you're just going to jail. So who wins there? That's just insanity. So that way of doing things, the level of consciousness that's run about that in terms of people looting shops and burning things down and chasing down certain groups, then obviously that needs to be stopped on every side. And in a time where there are so few answers and so few solutions, we need to go to a different place. I do believe, to fix it. The same mind that created that problem, which is where they're trying to keep us, we need to go beyond that. We need to transcend that. We need to go to a different place. And that's why, in this time, this spiritual life, because even though as difficult it is, the upside of it in terms of the positive experiences and the relief and the knowing, sat in meditation this morning, and in fact last night, the Sunday night, we did the experience, which came on the back of the riots down in England, and my desire to basically help people reconnect back into union with themselves and with each other, so we can remember, as I experienced, some people are really starting to get it, the connectiveness of us all, in the field. That was one of the biggest things that I got, how there's no separation. There is none. There's no separation at a certain level, excuse me. So the way we get that is through meditation. That's done with deep, intense spiritual work. Whether people are going to get that, hard to say. Very, very doubtful. I know, because we're trying to basically sell it and give it to people every single day. Even though I say that's what we're not trying to do, that is absolutely what we're trying to do. To give people an option, a solution to a place where you know about it and you understand how it goes together, and you start to learn about it, in terms of the language, but then you get the experience of it, and that's really what this is. I'm a bridge builder. This work is about building bridges and then giving the direct experience. I remember my wife came to see me for the first time when I did a full presentation, the 1 day to change your life, and at the end of the day she basically said to me, I get it, keep going, I understand what you're doing now, brilliant, keep going, I understand where you're coming from, the context, like how you worked that out, and that we've been together 30 years now, so there's a lot in it, there's a lot of language in it, there's a lot of different terminology and understanding how I believe things go together, certainly from that way of expressing it in that language, the spiritual language, but eventually you need to get the experience of it, and that's why this work that we're doing, how quick that it happens in terms of people coming in who are lost, completely separated, out of their mind, literally, a lot of them, a lot of people not well. That's the seems to be what's attracted to this work. But for me, it doesn't matter what comes in. I'm not actually interested in what the problem is, what the story is, ever. It doesn't matter, because the minute you put your attention on it, as you see just now, you start to shine a light on the problems, they're going to get bigger. So for me, it's always about the solutions, and the solution I know is a reconnection back to God. That's it. Back to consciousness. That's it. That's what I'm bringing to this. It's meditation. It's reunion. It's feeling that place of being complete. It feels like going home. You're tapping into and you reconnect back into that energy, as Abraham would say, the energy that creates worlds. That's where we come from. I absolutely know that, and it's inside of us. And it's a really it's such a beautiful way, not to live, because I do not live there all the time. I really don't. I'm a human being. I'm in this journey. I'm making sense of it for myself. It is no easy. I'm still doing the practice every single day, but I get glimpses of it, and in fact I get the experience of it every single day. That's what the meditation does. That's why I do it. And now this is our 6th week, I do believe, every single day online, 5:30 in the morning time. Which for me to decide to do that after the last 25, 26 years of my own. I had 2-3 hours to myself with God every single morning, so the decision for me to then give that up, I could get up even earlier, but I'm up 4:30, 10 to 4 this morning for a class at 5:30, so you then be getting up in your sleep if I have to do my 2-3 hours to myself. So now I've learned, in this stage that I'm at, which is all about service, it's all about service through inspiration, not giving myself away as a detriment to myself, but to basically inspire people with the practices, with the information, with the inspiration, absolutely, to give them that experience, or at least to help them, create the space to get their own experience, would be a better way of putting it. But when you get it, when you understand and you experience, that's the word, and I know I use that all the time, but when you experience it, it's like you can't buy experience. You don't know what it is unless you jump in and you feel it. You can't get wet for the word water. You need to jump in and feel it, and this is very much like that. And the good news is, I think how long this took me to work out. I think at all the hours, the hundreds of thousands of hours, just every single day, the books, the studies, the travelling, like seeking out the teachers, cassettes in my van when I was driving about between building sites every single day, 5:30, 6 in the morning, listening to them, just on repeat, listening to Wayne Dyer, constantly just taking in the information, learning a different language, and then going away, and then sitting myself, getting up during the night and sitting in silence and just working out a wee tiny like a crumb at a time, and then eventually you would get a kind of a quantum shift, and your consciousness would raise. And that would keep you going for the next wee bit. And that was over, 17, 18 years. Up to this day, it's been 26, 27 years. I've never missed a day. And the bit we're at just now, and the way that I've got it just now in terms of the work, it's happening really, really quickly. The biggest thing for me is that the wave of spirituality that needs to come in to fix this. There are so few teachers that understand what spirituality even is. They don't know what meditation is. The amount of yogis that don't meditate, the amount of yogis that don't have a meditation practice, and yoga literally means union with God, which is why you're doing yoga, so there's so many different, even the teachers that you see talking about like learning meditation, unless you've experienced God yourself, are you really qualified? I don't think you are, so, and that's the purpose of meditation. Meditation is not to quiet the mind, or to give you peace of mind, or to get into a state of contemplation. That isn't what it is. It's the direct experience of the divinity that's inside of you. That's what meditation should be. That's the plan with it, to experience the God that's inside you, that presence of the divine. So the good news is, I do believe there is a way. In fact, I know there is a way. There absolutely is a way to get there. All it takes is a reason and a why, what's your reasons for doing it. And for me, anybody that finds this work at this level, it normally comes through pain and suffering. It does. It normally gets to a point where they've tried everything else, and a lot of times they have tried everything else. And it comes to the point, and this is where you hear the language of the 12 steps, and handing everything over to God and surrendering to a higher purpose and a higher power. And a lot of that, for me, it's over 100 years old, that terminology. I work a lot with addiction, being an addict myself, absolutely. And we see how things evolve, and we see how things progress, and we see how what are the answers, what are the solutions. And there's something about the reconnection, back to you, that question that I ask everybody, who are you? It's a great question, do you know who you are? And especially corporate stuff, I love that, because people think that they're stuff. They think they're their money, they think they're their bank account, they think they're their legacy, a lot of people, the really successful ones, what they're leaving behind. And that's just the stuff that we do, your name, your importance, your titles, the things that you leave in terms of the fruits of your labour. That's just the stuff that you do in this lifetime, and that's not the bit that I'm talking about. It really isn't. It's that bit that's inside you. It's like if I'd asked that footballer today, who is he would have told me his career and what he achieved and all this stuff. And it's like, right, okay, so that's who you were then. Like, who are you now? When you're retired and barely recognisable to a lot of people probably, and yet an international superstar at one point. So that bit's always changing. I think of myself as being a wee boy running about as a 2-year-old, a Celtic stripling, with a dummy in my top pocket, and then going through primary school and then high school, and then the challenges that I faced in all different levels. And me being that version of me at different stages, right up to now, at 52 years old, and trying to make my way through this life. It's all different roles that you play, but at the same time, there's that divine essence, that divine perfection, that real, the bit that I would call the real you, that's inside of you, the bit that you brought into this world, and the bit that you absolutely, when we die, we go back to it, we reconnect back into spirit. There's no question about it. But it's inside you, and this process, this spiritual life, this spiritual way of living, that's what this is all about. That's what it's all about. It's about being able to live in these times with spiritual practices. It's about being able to be in the presence of hatred and darkness and separation, and the control that's trying to be kind of imposed upon us just now. We need to rise above that. We need to do it in a different way, and that's where just now, what's coming through in terms of the spiritual energies, without going rainbows and unicorns and all that kind of stuff. I don't do that, but what I can feel just now, there's a wave of optimism. There's a wave of power and light that's coming through, which I do believe is coming through from the divine. I've said for many years now, this reset that's on, even before the term the Great Reset, I always believed there had to be a reset. And I believed it was going to have to be by divine order, by divine nature, because the way that man has got it, whoever they are and whatever they're doing, it obviously isn't working. And when we see here just now the amount of control that's trying to be imposed upon us, at a certain point, you could well be looking at revolution, you could well be looking at a civil war, before you even start to look outside the borders. We're doing their job for us, we're killing ourselves. before you even look to the the international, the stuff that's on the different horizons, the wars that are out there that might actually come here at some point as well. So many problems, so many challenges, so many are broken, so many are suffering, and what is the solution? How do we fix it? And reconnection, reunion, back into yourself, back to the divine. Does it make everything better? For periods of time it does, aye. There's certain periods of the day when I'm sitting in that union, in that field of perfection, where it doesn't matter what comes your way, no matter anything, short of one or two things that would affect you, because you've got a choice at any time. Wayne Dyer used to talk about it a lot. He would talk about having a choice, as to where you're going to play it. Is it the human experience? Is it in with the divine? And I find myself there just now. The hashtag full God. When I talk about full God, me in the past, I have been full God. I have been that devotional, like a fiend. You talk about the moth to the flame. That was me for a long period of my life, and I had periods of. I've spoke about it on here again, 8-9 months at one point, where I was just in this place of bliss, but I get bored, I really did, and I started causing a wee bit of contrast and pain and suffering for whatever reason. I needed to get a wee bit of excitement in my life, I suppose, at the time, but the possibility, the ability that lies within every single one of us, when you hear stories like this, and there's so many more people talking about it, and people get it in different ways. For me, I was just clean. I never used the psychedelics, or which I don't believe you can get there. That they talk about ayahuasca and even obviously psilocybin as well. But for me, 18 years, the first 18 years was just completely clean. No nothing, just me and God sitting in silence every single day. That's how I got it, and it's the thing that gets me up out my bed every single morning. It's the thing that I'm here to teach, I do believe. It's to provide the bridges and the education, absolutely. It's to a different way of doing it. That normally comes off the way that it isn't working, so the pain and the suffering and the contrast, which we've got enough of just now, where people have been attracted to this work, because as an answer, it really is. It's an absolute solution. Every single thing gets better when we reconnect back into the self, and then eventually, through enough practice, back into each other happens very quickly, almost at the exact same time. And that's just an intention thing, to feel who you are and to feel the goodness that's inside you, and then to acknowledge as a truth that it must be in everybody. Maybe you're separated from it, maybe they're separated from it, maybe they're forgotten, but at some point when we came in, I believe we come from goodness. I believe we come from that divine mind. So the ways of the world and what's happened to people, to take them far away from that, or certainly further away from that than they should be, which is where almost everybody is, then this time, no matter what it is that it's going to take, we need to get back to that. And that's a wee bit terrifying, I'll be honest with you. It really is. The challenges and what would need to happen, because it is so far gone. The circus, and even watching the Olympics just now, I watched that guy batter that poor woman, man. And it's the world, it's just insanity. It's madness. It's so far away. They talk about the lunatics like running the asylum. It's way beyond that. How far do you go to how do we get here? How did we get to this place where it's so dysfunctional, where it's so broken, where so many people are sick and suffering and struggling? Desolation, suicide, what's going on? And we can know what's going on, we see what's going on, we can have a look into the environment and how it's set up and the way it's manipulated to, no surprise that it turns out like this. And we see even what people are eating every single day that we call food in this Western world, and we're supposed to be civilised. When you see the absolute literal shite that we're eating and watching, the amount of people that are just, I was down in Peebles yesterday, oh my God, the amount, just obese, like massive human beings, young people, men and women, just massive, so things are broken, they really are, we need to fix them, and there is a way, I do believe, reconnection, back to God, full God, the spiritual life, the ability to do both, to bring, as I used to do, I would be sitting in this field of perfection, this just absolute bliss. Then I'd come back, I need to go to work and deal with all the horrors I was facing in my business at the time, almost losing my house, and it was just terrible. It was absolutely terrible. And then eventually I was able to, ask the question, like, what would that guy do? That guy that sits between 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning in union with God, and like just everything's possible, and the energy of the universe kind of flowing through him, being in spirit, inspired. And then I'd watch myself like almost like a shell of a human being sometimes, try to deal with stuff because of stress. And how sick I was at the time, just with being overwhelmed and being under pressure, and eventually, I started to bring in the kind of the spiritual ways of doing things. I had to learn different ways of doing it, and then eventually now, the way that I now live it, most of the time, everything I do is towards this work. So my intention is to bring this to the world, is to bring God, consciousness, the field of the divine, into the daily, waking, direct experiences of as many human beings that are interested in it, and teach meditation and give the experience of meditation so that people know what meditation is, so they can tap into the power of it. Because when you tap into the power of it, everything gets better. That's the solution. That's all I've got. It's dead simple. It is no easy. It's all about meditation. It's all about being in alignment. It's all about feeling whole. It's all about being happy, about being joyful, that place of well-being, to be a well-being. And that takes a wee bit of practice. It takes a wee bit of work. That's what the program is, the intentional life, the art of intentional living. How you take all these different, modalities, whatever it is that you need, between the breath work and the cold exposure and the awareness and what you're doing to yourself and how you're eating, how you're sleeping, seeing how things work out, using your imagination to create, a different way of doing it, by designing where you want to be as opposed to where you are. And then eventually, we start to climb out the hole and get to that place that's available to all of us. And that's exciting. It's all about taking your power back. It's all about, reconnecting back to the way that it's meant to be. Dead simple. Keep it simple, keep it humble. One soul at a time, every single day. Get it for yourself, absolutely. The desire to go and take this to the world and to shout it for the rooftops doesn't normally work. People can't hear it. So the best way to do it is to get it for yourself. To take it up every day out of your bed. To sit in silence, to tap into that power, to get into the flow of inspiration, to find your own answers, whether it's healing, your solutions that you're looking for, at whatever level, whatever stage that you're at. And then eventually, once you get it for yourself, once you master yourself and get everything you need in this lifetime for you, then we get to take it forward, then we get to pass it on, then we get to help other human beings who are asking and looking for our help. And only at that point should you be doing that. Very important. Get it for yourself first and foremost. Tend to yourself, be selfish, and then once you get it, then we can pass it on. So that's the solutions. It's the spiritual path in this time. Full God, spirituality and the modern man. Crazy times, difficult times, the circus, the zoo, the jungle, where it is, we send it all love. Those who are suffering, those who are struggling, on every level, on every side. The people that are coming into this country, obviously the asylum seekers, the refugees, human beings, brothers and sisters. It doesn't matter what religion, where you've came from, what flag you stand under, what colour your skin is. At a certain level, we are absolutely all one. We are part of this field of divine perfection. And someday we will all realise that. We'll go back to it. The minute you snuff it, the minute you die, you're back to it. And at that point, God willing, you'll get to experience it. But the good news is you don't need to die to get it. That's where becoming enlightened, whilst you're still alive, is the way we get this planet back onto the way it's meant to be, back onto its feet. And enlightenment simply means the direct experience of the unity, the direct experience of the divinity that's inside you, that unitive experience. To be in wholeness, to be in alignment, to be in the flow with it, to be part of it, to be one with it. That's what enlightenment is, and it's available to every single one of us. Onwards and upwards, love and light. Have a fantastic day wherever you are. Peace out. I will see you all very soon. Thanks for watching. God bless, and bye for now.